Good evening, everybody. Welcome to El Podo, the Primera RFEF show. We are back after another fantastic weekend of football, and we are well and truly in the swing of things now. I'm Nick Bell. I'm delighted to be joined once again by my co-host Liam Bambridge. Liam, how have you been?
Yeah, pretty good. Seen some really good games this weekend. I think the first weekend we're a bit short on goals, weren't we? This weekend, lots and lots of really decent games, and even those that didn't have many goals had some drama. So yeah, an excellent weekend of football watching.
Absolutely, and the added twist of being an international break. So obviously in Spain, the top league, they get to have the week off. Spanish Segunda continues, but more focus does come on to Primera Federación, except if you're at Real Madrid Castilla. But we'll come on to that later. Should we go through some quick news before we get into the games we looked at last week?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's fire away with these new anti-violence measures, shall we? Interesting, some of these. I can't help feeling that I haven't seen an awful lot of violence in Primera Federación Stadia, to be honest. It feels a little bit heavy-handed, but this is all part of the same thing, isn't it? With this kind of closer relationship between the RFEF and La Liga, which has been encouraged in the last few months by Luzan's friendship with Tebas. So I guess it was always going to apply to Primera Federación, but I think a lot of it is kind of a little bit pointless, really.
Yeah, I think the biggest sort of like shock of it for me is its intention to descend down into Segunda Ref and Tercera Ref as well, which, when you get down to that level, it's a really loads of violence to be spoken of, or certainly, drunken disorder behaviour. I don't tend to think so, but some of the rules they're bringing in for, or certainly that they're implementing this season, aren't really hitting well with the fans, are they, Liam? Like, I'm interested to see how this breathalyzer control for high-risk games and playoff games is going to work, because I've been to a few football games in Spain, and I tend to go for a few cañas beforehand. So, am I putting myself at risk of not getting into La Rosaleda or any other Spanish stadium if I have a few before I go in now?
It's like you say, Nick, how many instances do you see that happen inside football grounds because of excessive drinking outside football grounds? It's just unnecessary. And when you're talking about bringing that down as far as, one of the things as well is, big fines for clubs selling alcohol. You go and watch a Tercera F game in Madrid, as I've done a number of times with our friends from Football Modesto. It's part of the occasion. It's completely unnecessary to start bringing in anti-drinking measures at that level. There's never any trouble, and it just seems like an incredibly heavy-handed approach to something which I just don't think on the whole that the Spanish have such a big problem with drinking before football. They just don't. They just think it's part of the, a nice start to the afternoon, have a couple of beers, maybe one or two too many, but I don't see anything spilling over because of it. I think it's for the very, very few incidents that do take place, this seems to be a ridiculously over-the-top reaction.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of this, I think, is centered around maybe, I don't want to maybe caveat it as certain groups, things like that, maybe because they're doing things like you can only use one megaphone in the stadium now, and that person who has the megaphone needs to be identified to the Policía Nacional. You need a license to have a banner, and there's no more surprise tifos. And if they're deemed to be politically incorrect, again, whose interpretation of politically incorrect, and that will be pursued rigorously, it said. So, all a bit strange. Can't see how it's going to be enforced too much. I think maybe it's a like a bit of a red line in the worst case of scenarios potentially, but it's still, a bit pointless in my view.
Yeah, very much so. And as you say, I hope there'll be a sense of only when really necessary is it called into play. And most of the time, just let people get on with it, and they seem to be doing quite a good job without these kind of restrictions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Do you want to move on to something else which is slightly farcical, Liam? Because obviously we picked Real Madrid Castilla versus Racing Club de Ferrol this weekend. It got postponed because of all the internationals that play for Real Madrid's B team being away. They've got themselves in the news again, Liam. They've now asked for a fixture change because they don't like the idea of playing a Wednesday-Saturday mix-up. They have been scheduled to play, I think, on the 19th, that game against Ferrol, and now they've asked for it to be rearranged, or they've asked for the weekend game to be rearranged. I'm not too sure, but they're not happy, are they?
Yeah, I think presumably the midweek game will be like the 17th. I suppose the weekend games, 19th, 20th. I haven't looked at all the match day 4 fixtures yet, as they've only recently come out as usual. But yeah, should we just run the whole league around what's best for Real Madrid Castilla? Let's just not worry about it. Clearly, they're the only team we need to bother about. Most of them don't even want them in the league. But yeah, let's just make sure that they're sorted out. I mean, imagine if you're a Racing Club de Ferrol fan. As I know that I think I'm right in saying that they don't usually let away fans into to their training ground to watch those B team games at Real Madrid. But if you were trying to get into that game, or if in any way you managed to get a ticket for it, you were told that not much more than 48 hours notice the game wasn't taking place. And in case anyone hasn't noticed, it's quite a long way from Ferrol to Madrid. So it's just a complete lack of respect as usual for in this situation. And do they not? Is their entire C team missing as well? I mean, is this a club with so few players available that they can't just promote a few of those? It just smacks, as usual, of them thinking that they're the only people worth bothering about out there is their concerns, basically. And I'm astonished it was granted. And let's not forget as well, Nick, I know they had a lot of players missing, but there are teams. Segunda goes on as normal. Quite a few teams in Segunda had players missing. Andorra last night had to play their third choice keeper against Eibar because both the number 1 and number 2 were away on international duty, and he was at fault for both the goals that Eibar scored. No one's going there and saying we've got to call the game off because we've only got a third choice keeper available. So it's an absolute nonsense, and I'm really disappointed in the federation for missing that, because it feels like just one rule as usual for them, one rule for everyone else.
It is a bit bend and scrape, isn't it, from that perspective? But with a Real Madrid hat on, if I was missing my 45 million euro superstar Argentine international, I'd maybe be thinking, I might try and get this postponed and get that advantage back, maybe. But yeah, a little bit mad. Maybe onto some better news, because we were speaking, me and you, earlier this week about Cacereño having to find an alternative venue for their home game against Arenteiro this weekend. They had asked to get the fixture reversed so they could go away to Arenteiro, but there are rules within Primera Federación where you can't play more than 2 games away back to back. So they've had to find an alternative venue, and they are heading down to the Estadio Francisco de la Era, which is Extremadura's home ground. So that's fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I quite like that. I mean, it's nice to see a little bit of camaraderie between teams in Extremadura, and I like the fact that I think the club have offered free travel, haven't they, for season ticket holders. Is not that far, but still a nice gesture. I know they tried really hard to get things sorted at Cacereño. I seem to remember, wasn't their chairman or something like working on one of the bulldozers at one point or something? So they've worked really hard to try and get this ground up to scratch in time for this game. And I think they had the first 2 games away, didn't they? Because they wanted to try and get it done, but they haven't quite managed to get there. So hopefully it'll be ready for the next home game that they're scheduled to have. But yeah, it's nice to see a little cooperation there and a local club coming to their rescue in this situation.
It is, and I think season ticket holders for Extremadura as well get access to it. So again, some potentially extra support against what potentially could be a relegation rival. Though that being said, Arenteiro this weekend, I'm sure we'll speak about those later. Maybe not thinking the same way that we are. They've obviously asked for those games to be moved as well, Liam, because they were scheduled for 2:00 kickoff, but the weather isn't really.
Yeah, I think that's the following week, isn't it? That's week 4. I think that's the Cacereño and Mérida game, isn't it? I think that's the following week. Yeah. So that's one of the few things I did spot so far from Jornada 4 is that, you've got Cacereño and Mérida kicking off at 2:00 in the afternoon. Now, I know we are into mid-September at this point, but that's not a great idea. I believe that the clubs have managed to get a doctor's report or something to support their claim. They're happy to play the game on the same day, but they want to play it at 7:00. And I think this is really interesting, Nick, because it points to a wider spread malaise amongst supporters and clubs as well, I suspect, with this new TV deal, which seems to be essentially setting up fixtures to be played at times that suit the TV fans, basically, rather than the fans in the stadium. I mean, from my point of view, I quite like a midday game on a Saturday. It fits in quite well with my schedule, but I don't have to go to these games at midday on a Saturday. And we're talking about cutting across, for instance, Saturday lunchtime, which is not a time when most teams who want to encourage their fans to come out because they've got other commitments. A lot of people Saturday afternoons have other things on, and these timings that they're putting in there are purely for the benefit of the armchair supporter. And this, some would argue, is because it's a derby, is particularly with those armchair supporters in mind, and it goes against common sense in terms of what the temperature might be. So we'll see what happens with that one, because I'm sure it's not a coincidence that game's been scheduled to be played, halfway through the afternoon. But it does seem to be a really bad call, given that the temperatures could still be significantly hotter than they will be in Blackpool on that day, Nick.
Yeah, it will be significantly hotter than it is in Blackpool. Mate, it is freezing here. But no, I completely agree with you as well. And this is a game for the fans as well. This Merida Casareño, it's quite a friendly derby in all respects, isn't it? If I remember right, I think someone messaged us during the summer to say that this is we're all mates basically. So you'll want to fill the stadium for that and have plenty of people there to do so. Putting it at these kind of times, it isn't really conducive to, like, say, family life or temperatures and stuff like that. So it'll be a shame if, like I say, Tebas has got his grubby little mitts all over this, and we can't change this round because of this television deal, of which seemingly we can't watch either, Liam. That's the other thing that pisses me off about it. So yeah, less of that, more common sense, please, from Primera Federación. How about a fun one from the Segunda Federación, Liam? Because we might recall we spoke briefly last season about La Union. They made the playoffs. They were just picked to I think it was Grupo 8, first position by Torremolinos. Could have been promoted. They went for a bit of a rebrand this summer. They became Club Deportivo Unión Malacitano. Is that right? Malacitano? That's the one. They were basically told, no, it's not happening. Change your name back. Go back to Murcia. Crack on. They've turned up to their first fixture, Liam, with all Malacitano kit and nothing to wear other than that kit, and basically said, you can't wear that kit. That's not your name. You have to wear La Union kits. Can you get one out, please? And they've gone, well, we've not got one. What do we do? They've ended up having to wear the away kit of Atletico Antoniano, their opposition, which in the first game of the season is just a farce, isn't it?
Utterly ridiculous. The whole scenario is ridiculous. I don't have any sympathy for this new club that they tried to form. I do think, though, it's ridiculous that a couple of the obstacles were overcome, and then at the last minute, they were then told at the last minute that you got to go back and play in Murcia again. It just seems absolutely farcical, and the farce continues. As you say, how can you turn up for the first game with a kit that you're not allowed to wear? It just seems ridiculous. I'm not sure how much longer this club's going to last, because obviously the idea was to move it to Malaga, and presumably the owners now, it's back in Murcia, are not so interested in putting their money in. So it could be a very long, drawn out, painful saga, this one. But yeah, this weekend was utterly ridiculous.
Yes, it really, really was. And we hope it doesn't go that way. But, we could really hope that, something comes to fruition where, we don't like to see teams die, do we? But, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how that one ends up. Should we talk about some football clubs that did play some football this weekend in their home kits and their actual kits, Liam? Because we have a few that we recommended last week. Should we go through those Grupo Uno games that you told us about?
Yeah, well, I'll go through two of them, because the third one, of course, was Real Madrid Castilla against Racing Club de Ferrol. I've got a substitute, though, Nick, for that one, and it's a cracking substitute as well. But yeah, we do try and watch the games, of course, that we recommended. It was a bit hypocritical to ask you to watch them and suggest that you watch them if we don't. So I started with Baracaldo against Zamora. I thought it was a really decent game. I didn't think it was going to end goalless. I think both sides coming into the game hadn't scored at that stage, but they both scored in this game. And yeah, it was a really decent game. I think overall, Baracaldo, and if you've seen and even the highlights of this one, Nick, I thought Baracaldo were unlucky. I thought overall they probably deserved to win this game.
Yeah, I managed to catch the highlights of this match whilst I was watching them back this weekend. And yeah, I very much felt that in terms of, we've got this expectation of Zamora at the moment, haven't we? I guess, especially with their signings and, the money they've spent and stuff like that. But it doesn't appear to be clicking. And this Baracaldo side, which, isn't in great form themselves, or certainly hasn't demonstrated it to me, they were equal to them, weren't they? They were all over them at points.
Yeah, I think the problem here is that we talked about, as you say, that there's been a lot of recruits at Zamora. Looks like an impressive squad they've got now. But the tribote strikers that they brought in, the big name there, I suppose, is Slava, isn't it? And he got injured about 3 or 4 weeks ago and hasn't featured since. So that's a big loss for them. Interesting that Farrell only just came off the last couple of minutes in this one, so he's not making the starting lineup. So 2 of the 3 that we really like the look of in terms of signings aren't really featuring at the moment. So Carbonell started up front. I just thought they looked a bit shot shy, to be honest. I didn't think they created a huge amount over the 90 minutes. And Yeah, the home side probably. I mean, there was an early chance for Zamora, but again, it came from the right back. Rufa, a lovely volley that he hit just over the bar, and didn't really see anything from the more attacking players from them. And then they had this quite bizarre open goal miss from Baracaldo. What did you make of it? It was almost comedy before that, wasn't it? The ball flew miles up in the air, and Zamora keeper sort of tried to. I don't know what he tried to punch it, whatever he tried to do. He was under pressure. 9 referees out of 10 would have given a free kick at that stage. It clearly wasn't a free kick. He just made a hash of it Olarte. And then it fell to Galata, and he had an open goal, and he headed his chance over the bar. So that was kind of a little bit Keystone Cops, like I thought. It wasn't one of the finest moments of football of the game. Olarte kind of made up for it a bit after that, didn't he? He made a couple of decent saves. And then we had FES. Here came FES again. FES seems to be a feature of quite a few appeals at the moment for penalties, doesn't it? And Baracaldo had one as well.
They did, and they would have got it through if it wasn't fit to be turned down. At the amount of, I don't know if you've watched on the highlights as well, Liam, is the amount of times they watch the referee go over to the monitor and how they've made that like a thing. They don't just hop over it anymore. They've got the whole like charade around it. It is getting well used, and this was used for that penalty, and it was nicely slotted away by Molina as well, wasn't it? So it's
no, that's not. No, there were actually in this case, actually in this game, there were 2 penalties that weren't given. So it's interesting. It does seem to be. It almost feels like most of the appeals were that I saw this weekend. A lot of them anyway were appeals for penalties that referees hadn't given, and there were 2 in this game. So you only get 2 appeals per coach, and Baracaldo had 2, and neither were given, and quite correctly so, in my opinion. But it almost feels like now, when there's any contact on a player in the box, certainly if you got, I mean, the last one was sort of like that 92nd minute. It was one of these ones where we got an appeal left, might as well chuck it in the hat, see what happens. Somebody's got down the box, let's give it a shot. And quite rightly, the referee turned that one down as well, as he should have done for the first one. And they also had a goal disallowed for offside, Baracaldo. So, they probably feel like they didn't get the rub of the FES decisions. But yeah, I think overall, they were the better side. As I say, Zamora didn't offer much going forward, and when they eventually did score, it was an own goal from Unai Pero. And then Molina slotted home basically the equaliser from just outside the box in this one, it was the right right outcome. At the very least, a draw would have been the very least that Baracaldo deserved from this game. And as I say, many would argue they should have won it. So yeah, Zamora, a bit of work to do yet. But as I say, Slav was a massive miss at the moment. If he's back soon and fully fit, then I think the tide will start to turn in their favour in the weeks to come. Tenerife Merida was my next game, Nick. Well, I'm sure you saw at least the highlights of that. What did you make of it?
Well, I think as you've said here, is there such a thing as a routine 3-0 victory? It was a bit imperious from Tenerife, wasn't it? And against Merida, obviously one of the top sides from last season's Grupo Dos. They just looked like they were on top of it. Job done, working away, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like for a lot of this game, Nick, they were quite orderly, Tenerife. I just didn't see an awful lot of them. But, they've got Jesus de Miguel. It's just like, I mean, when he was at Castellón a couple of seasons ago in Primera RFEF, he was absolutely lights out. I can't remember the goals he scored. I think at least 20. But, he was incredible. And he scored 2 in this game. And they've also got Enrique Gallego. And both of those 2 strikers, by the way, I didn't think looked good enough for Segunda last season, but at this level, well, we know what De Miguel can do, as I say, only just a couple of seasons ago. Gallego is about 58 now, not quite that old actually, but about 38. But he's a real formidable presence in the air. He knows where the goal is. I don't think he's good enough for Segundo anymore, but he can certainly cope with Primera Federación. And as I say, without playing particularly well, they scored 3 goals, those 2 between them. Gallego had another one disallowed. They scored 5 goals in the first 2 games. They haven't conceded any. Already, it feels a little bit ominous, doesn't it, for the other 19 groups in Grupo Uno?
It really does. And I think, like you say, when you've got strikers like that, and we maybe look towards Ibiza with Bebé, for example, who not have found the level, but are good enough and some more for the level as well. And having two of them up top there, and they seem to form a really good understanding with each other too, which I think is very good for, especially for Di Miguel as well, because as we know, he knows how to score at this level. He was brilliant for Castellón, as you said. So for me, what can stop Tenerife apart from themselves? Like, can you get all thought up in your own thoughts and basically end up tripping yourself up? Because they're the only team at the minute that I can see would take them down is Tenerife, and they are, have got maybe the sideshow of the off the stuff issues, but off the pitch issues, but they just look great. Like I say, ordinary but great.
It's very, very early days, but yeah, that's the scary thing for me is that, as I say, I don't think that either game they've looked particularly special, and they've scored 5 goals and not conceded any. 6 points out of 6. It just feels like this is a team that could well run away with this division, and we're only in week 2, so we'll see. But it's very, very promising for them in early days. One of the teams we think will give them a hard run for their money, of course, is Racing Club de Ferrol, who sat out this weekend thanks to the shenanigans in the courtroom with Real Madrid Castilla and getting their postponement. So I thought I'm going to fit another game in instead. So I watched Atletico Sanluqueno against Sabadell. What a game that was! Absolutely tremendous. However, before I talk about the actual action, Nick, what do you make of the Sabadell pink away shirt? I'm pretty sure it's a Kappa. What do you think about that one?
I like it. Well, like I say, I think Kappa have really got their ideas right this season. And it's not often you see such a pink. Is it? It's noticeable. Let's put it that way. And I think when you've got a such an iconic home shirt, to have an away shirt which has its own vibrancy is always quite handy, isn't it? What did you think?
Yeah, I like it. I have to say, I think when you see pink kits, away pink kits, there've been quite a few more of them, haven't there, in recent years? They're quite often a paler pink, aren't they? They're not quite as standout, really brilliant pink. This is, isn't it? And yeah, I was a bit shocked at first when I first saw it because I hadn't noticed it in the kit announcements over the summer. But then I grew to like it quite quickly, and as you say, it's very striking. What was not striking about the first 10 minutes of this game, Nick, was dear old Petr Kudakovsky in the home goal for Atletico Sanluqueno, comes rushing out of his area to make a clearance, completely misses the ball. And then one of his defenders, Boubacar Diallo, the only way to stop, I think it was Escudero, was going to slot the ball into an unguarded goal. He fouled Escudero. Referee gave a red card. There was a defender fairly near, so I guess they appealed on that basis. But the appeal for the red card came to nothing. So they were down to 10, and then Escudero scored. Well, when I said tapping it, I think probably both you and I would have scored it. It was one of those, one of those from 6 inches, basically, that that he will not score an easy goal in his entire career. So that was 1-0 Sabadell. And then this lad Feki Diaz, who I saw, I think last year at Algeciras, and he's just moved very locally, just down the road to Atletico Sanluqueno. Smashed when it's a crossbar in his bright red boots. I thought that was quite nice to watch. But then we had this ridiculous sending off for Sergio Segura to make it 10 aside. Because, and I don't know what you think about this, Nick, but I see a lot of this with football, and a lot of refs will not give this yellow card. And I think that a lot of people think that this first yellow card for Sergio Segura was a bit pedantic. But what it did was, it was a free kick. I think he was deep inside the Atletico Sanluqueno half, and it was a free kick. And he wanted to get back into position. So rather than put the ball down, he threw it to one of his teammates. So he basically wasted time. He basically stopped him taking a quick free kick. And it wasn't like he obviously sort of kicked the ball away scenarios, but it was time wasting. It was killing the game. And the referee booked him. And what's your view on that? Is the referee being a bit of a pedant? Am I being a pedant for backing up on this, or is that reasonable?
I think it's a harsh yellow. I think a warning there, unless I hadn't seen it and it'd been warned before for something else maybe. But going straight with a yellow card for that one, it's just a bit of dark arts. And I suppose that's the thing that's been killed out of the game at the minute is the dark arts. But it wouldn't have been for me. But I can see why it was given. And it puts them on warning, doesn't it? Then because then you've got to be careful for the rest of the game. Less than 10 minutes.
exactly that, and that's what was foolish, wasn't it? Okay, so if you disagree with that, I happen to like it, and I want to see the dark arts stamped out of the game. To be honest, I think dark arts is tantamount to saying cheating, basically. But yeah, he has to be careful. I think the second yellow is a little bit harsh. I think he wins the ball and then he classes into the Atletico Sanluqueno player as he kind of follows through with it. But yeah, I suppose it's instinctive, the challenge he makes. He's probably not thinking in the spur of the moment, I'm on a yellow, I'm going to make contact with the other player. But yeah, that really didn't help, did it? When they were one up and a goal up and a player up, it was careless to get himself sent off. But then we had this straight after the interval. Lopez Pinto, I think, was at Ibiza last year. I'm not sure, but he was certainly in Primera RFEF somewhere. And he takes a free kick out on the right-hand side. Cheeky, I would describe it as. But again, is this Kulikowski's fault? Now, it's one of those free kicks from the right-hand corner of the penalty area. And what I loved about Lopez Pinto was he brilliantly disguised what he was going to do, to the point where he was even looking into the penalty area as to where he was going to sort of drift it over to the far post, as most players would in that situation. And then he just bent it around the side of the wall and into the top corner. But is that a keeper error, or is that a bit of cheeky brilliance from Lopez Pinto in your book?
Oh, it's going to be a bit of cheeky brilliance. We love a bit of cheeky brilliance, don't we, Liam? We said that Eugeni from Marbella last week against Real Murcia tried something similar and obviously scored too. And it's that kind of innovation that you like to see, and you get it a lot down at these levels as well. When you've got, I don't want to say a mismatch of quality. That's not the right word I'm saying, but you've got these renegades who will happily try something like that, going risk and reward. High risk, high reward, and it certainly worked out for him with this goal.
I think most keepers would be expecting to cross there, and Kulikowski gets a good couple of hands on it, just can't quite keep it out because the execution is perfect. So I'm leaning on the side of cheeky brilliance as well. But yeah, I think a lot of people look at it and go, caught out his near post, and he's having a bad day already after that shocking mistake early on. So I don't know. Yeah, for me, yeah, I prefer to err on the side of let's praise somebody rather than slagging somebody off. The Atletico Sanluqueno goal to make it 2-1. Now, listen, I was really pleased because Sato scored it. And of course, he was at Yaclano Deportivo last year, and any excuse to see something nice happening for an ex-Licano player. But what on earth was Uri, the Sabadell central midfielder, doing? So the ball loops up off Sato over the keeper's head, and it's going in the goal. And Uri's almost stood in the goal line, and he just stands there and watches it go in. I'm like, what are you doing? I mean, you might be worried about scoring an own goal here, mate, but it's going in.
You've got to defend it.
Yeah, he turns and looks at everyone else around him and goes, what was I supposed to do? Like, clear the ball, you idiot. He just stood and watched it. But yeah, that was utterly ridiculous. As if that wasn't ridiculous enough, the second goal, ball, I think it's a 97th minute as well, the equaliser, 97th minute for the home side, ball through the channels, I think, and the defender, I think it was Bonaldo chasing back and under pressure. And out comes Fuoli, who, by the way, he made an unbelievable save in this second half. Just like out of this world, just incredible. What a keeper he is. And it was interesting because we put our 11s of the week up, didn't we, earlier on, and Primera Federación al Día, an account that we really love, came back to us about it and said, yeah, really like your teams, but could Fuoli have been the Grupo Dos keeper of the week rather than, I think I chose Bila from Eldense, and I was like, yeah, he probably deserved it just for that save alone. Unbelievable. But in this occasion, he comes up his goal. I don't know what I presume he needs a little pass back to his foot so he can boot it clear, and that's the end of the game. Bonaldo nutmegs him. He pokes it through. Poor keeper. He's had a really decent game overall, and that made me wonder, Nick. Now, you might know the answer to this. We could ask our English-speaking viewers, listeners, whatever you are. Where does nutmeg come from? Why is it a nutmeg? And my second part of that question is, how do you say nutmeg a defender or nutmeg the keeper in Spanish? So if you are listening to this and you have understood all that rubbish that I've been rambling on about there, how do you say to do a nutmeg? Because I have no idea how to say that in Spanish. So because some Spanish, English-speaking Spanish native speaker, please help me out and tell me how to say to nutmeg. Essentially to push the ball through the legs of, usually a winger does it on a defender, but on this occasion, poor old Bonaldo nutmegged Fuoli expertly.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know where to start with that. To be fair, I've only just learned about a Kilena, so after Rafa Rodriguez scored one for Malaga. So I think there was still some dispute about that, wasn't there? But it'd be interesting to know what a nutmeg gig
Yeah.
is. I
Afe
felt
or
sorry for
nutmeg?
Benaldo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I did feel for Benaldo because he had a great game last week, and I thought he
yeah.
was quite decent in this game as well. But it's just one of those
Yeah.
mad lapses of concentration in the 97th minute. The amount of 97th-minute goals as well we're getting so far this season, Liam, is quite unusual considering we're only into game day 2. But
I think the thing, to be fair, he did just try and push it back towards his keeper, didn't he? I mean, he couldn't have done it if he tried. He could make that back pass 100 times, and I reckon 99 times it would end up on Forley's right foot. But somehow, wherever he just managed to literally poke it between his legs and the ball just rolled in, and of course the home crowd went mental, and Sabadell had lost 2 points in the dying embers of the game. So yeah, I agree. Bernal was great last week. It's one of those things. Get over it, move on. But I don't think I've ever seen that in all my many years watching football. I don't think I've ever seen a similar situation where a defender basically pokes the ball through his own keeper's legs.
No, and I think as well to praise Sabadell again too. They are looking like the fun side of this league, and I think speaking of Ferran Costa, it seems to be quite high risk, high reward football, like the cheeky bit of brilliance that Pinto showed us. So they're going to be a good team to watch this year, and some might say this is 2 points drop, but a point away at Atletico Sanluqueno this early in the season, it's not to be shaded at, if I'm being perfectly honest. So yes, a much better game than Real Madrid Castilla versus Racing Club de Ferrol any day of the week, as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about that one instead. Do you want to talk about some more Grupo Dos games whilst we're at it?
Yeah, let's go on to Grupo Dos, which were your picks of the week, weren't they? Even though the first one involves a filial.
Yes, exactly. It's a shame. However, for good reason, because it is Europa that we're talking about. It was great to see football at New Sardinia. An opportunity for us to talk about how ridiculous it is that they're not going to be able to play here against January. But I think we've got a little sidebar on that later, Liam. And it was a great opener from Sevilla Atletico, to be fair, to try and really ruin the party. The towering Ike Munoz, who I believe made your team of the week as well, with a great header at the back post. He was, just there, wasn't he? He's just like a lamppost. I don't know if you saw this, but Sevilla Atletico have got a team of monsters from the film Space Jam. They are giants.
Yeah, they're a very big side, aren't they? They're going to be a real threat to anyone from set pieces. And Munoz is one of the biggest, a hell of a header, yeah. But I mean, what a brilliant response from Europa, hey, in terms of the way they came back in. Obviously, hugely helped by a superb crowd, particularly behind that goal, which is always really lively behind one of the goals at one end. Yeah, tremendous, and Europa really went for it second half, didn't they? And of course, Bacca scored again. So
he did. He seems to be all over at the minute. 2-2 for Vacas, and I think the thing I really enjoyed about Europa is that they have a shoot on sight attitude, which I think will serve them really, really well. And when you've got players like Vacas who are willing to get into the mixer, you've got Jordi Canho, who I thought was really, really good this game. He wasn't that highly rated in the B Soccer ratings when I was looking back to see what his score was, but I thought he was really, really busy. And yeah, it was just a great equaliser for them, and they possibly should have scored more. They should have had a penalty as well, in my eyes, Liam. Did you see the penalty claim?
Yeah, I thought. I mean, I've seen quite a few penalty appeals turned down by FES this weekend. I thought this was one of the ones that was very marginal. I've seen them given. Yeah, I was surprised and obviously disappointed because I'd loved Europa to have got a winner. But yeah, as you say, well, I thought Cannon was very good as well. I'm surprised. I didn't look at the B Soccer ratings for this one, but I'm surprised that he didn't score highly because he looked good to me. And overall, they look good. And coming back from 1-0 down and everything, it's very encouraging. They don't look like they're here to make up the numbers, do they? They're a bit of an unknown to us in terms of their squad coming into the season because they hadn't signed many players with any sort of Primera RFEF experience. But yeah, they look like they're going to be competitive, which is always great news for teams that come up. Shall we move on to your second game, which was another team newly promoted, Torremolinos, and their trip to Real Murcia? Real David and Goliath clash this one.
Yes, exactly. And that's how I would certainly demonstrate it to begin with. And I think Juventud de Torremolinos maybe showing a bit of their nervousness, naivety, whichever word we'd like to use there, about playing at this level. You don't need to go jumping around like a salmon with your elbows in the air this early into a game, do you, Liam? Especially when there's not really a lot of threat to clear the ball. You just got to stick it in Rose Ed sometimes, don't you? This penalty that they earn, it is a penalty, isn't it? Because it's a right slap on the face.
Yeah, it's just clumsy, isn't it, really? As you say, it's not even a particularly dangerous situation. I think it probably is a penalty. I think you're right, but you could really feel for him, because I think it was one of those situations that he just almost over enthusiastic, maybe nervous, whatever. Just a poor judgment, and and the penalty from Flaccus. That's how you take a penalty. We saw one from was it Jaume Jardi that scored one like this week as well for Gimnàstica Tarragona against Betis Deportivo. Flaccus as well, top bins, smashed it, unstoppable. And yeah, we like Flaccus, don't we? Obviously, Castellón don't think he's Segunda standard, and I think they got €500,000 from, so they probably thought, I imagine they got him in for nothing, so that they thought it was probably a tidy profit on a player who they think is not quite good enough, but their loss is definitely our gain in Primera Federación. But then we had, for me, a tough one for the away side to take, who were always up against in this game, going to such a big side as Real Murcia. But I thought this was a tough decision, didn't you?
I can't see how FES can make this decision. We had this chat about, it was Teruel versus Betis Deportivo, wasn't it? And for me, Cristiano looks like he's timed his run perfectly here. Again, without drawing lines, without having some kind of level camera to deal with it, I don't see how it's fair and reasonable to rule this goal out, because unless you're an absolute, whiz kid at looking diagonally, there's no way it can be done. And I thought, to be fair to Torremolinos, they deserve this goal as well.
Totally agree with you. I couldn't say it better myself, Nick. I just don't understand. I mean, I like the idea of FES in some situations, although it has slowed a lot of games down. And of course, managers are going to use both of their appeals. So we're guaranteeing 4 VAR interventions pretty much in every game, or FES, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. The whole point of VAR and drawing lines is it can be definitely established, even if it's a toenail, it can be established that a player is offside. They spent ages on this one. For a start, if they spent ages on it, it suggests that it's very close. If it's very close, why are we making a decision using a camera angle that we can't depend on, without any lines to sort of try and come up with a definitive ruling? It's absolutely wrong. I agree with you. You're quite right. Exactly the same thing happened, I think, in the Teruel game as well. And they need to look at this, because it's just not fair. I've done what I can with my freeze frame on YouTube. He looks onside to me. And I know that's a very inexpert view, but I can't see that the TV camera they're looking at is any more clear cut, in which case it wasn't given, I don't think, initially either, was it? So let's stick with the original decision and stop trying to guess where the lines are, because there aren't any lines. So yeah, very disappointing and really tough call against Torremolinos. And to be fair, they carried on fighting, didn't they? They did carry on battling all the way through that second half. It ended 1-0, and I think they should be really encouraged. But conversely, I don't know what you think. I think Real Murcia, they need to be better, don't they? They struggle to a 1-0 win here. There are quite a few new players in there, but I wasn't desperately impressed.
No, and I think we've spoken about their top 5 ambitions this season. And I think if they do want to get into that top 5, then they need to really focus on their finishing, because they weren't shy of chances, and they really looked to test the Torremolinos goalkeeper. And if it wasn't for a few bodies being thrown away, they possibly could have scored a few more. But they also missed a lot of chances as well, clear opportunities too. And, when we have got Flaccus who can score the way we know he can do, getting that service right to him is imperative to the success of this side. I just think maybe against this Torremolinos team who, performed gallantly, they didn't look like, say, for example, how we're viewing Ibiza, how we're viewing Tenerife, for example, as a potential runaway leader. So, they've got to get a lot better there, haven't they?
Yeah, I think so. And talking of Ibiza, I think that was your last game, wasn't it? Ibiza against Hércules. And you mentioned Bebé earlier on, and again in this game, massive performance from him, wasn't it?
He is. He feels like, to quote what the kids would say nowadays, a cheat code in this league, because he was absolutely everywhere in this match. He was menacing from the start. His first sort of intervention that we can talk about is obviously the assist he provided for Alex Gaillard, just jinxing past his man. And again, Hercules are a good side. We are, again, another side we are tipping for being towards the top end of the table. He just left him in his wake. He was like he wasn't there. And then just that perfect ball into the space, into the pocket for Alex Gaillard to finish calmly. Another top player for this level. It's hard to see how Ibiza are not going to end up towards the top of this table this season when you've got two players like this combining on the regular.
Yeah, I mean, they were both there last year, I suppose. Bebé was only there from January onwards, though, and Gaillard had a long time out injured, didn't he? So towards the end of the season, so that really hurt them at the most crucial time. I mean, I was impressed by Hercules as well. As you say, we tipped them to do well this season. I really like Ben Hamed at Amora Bieta last year. I thought that was a great signing from there. It was a great pickup, really good scouting. Superb goal in this game. I'm not sure he's particularly renowned for his shooting, but this was a tremendous goal. But then back off to Bebé again, and just when you think this is probably going to end up being a draw and a really decent point for Hercules, up steps Bebé with another Bebé special, isn't it?
Oh, well, if you've got time to go back and watch this, I think it's been clipped several times as well, and I will make sure this goes out onto our social media this evening. It's just the perfect layback. You think, does he take a touch? Can he take a touch? This is Bebé. No, he doesn't. He just first time bends it round the goalkeeper, top bins. It is everything you want to see from Bebé in Ibiza. And this is 2 weeks in a row now that he's scored, and he's scored in spectacular fashion. And I don't think he's looking like he's going to stop, Liam. I think we could be looking at a record-breaking season here with Bebé. And it's so strange to say this because obviously there are connotations around Bebé of previous, of past, especially if you're in an English-speaking market. He's a world beater at this level.
Yeah, he doesn't score tappers, does he, Bebé? That's the only thing. I'm not sure he can score 20 goals like that. he doesn't get a 6-yard box very often, does he, to be fair? But yeah, he is a tremendous player. He's a delight to watch. And he looks like he'll probably be here for the whole season. So he was only there for half the season last year. If he could carry on at this rate, he's not going to score, obviously, a goal a game for the rest of the season. But if he can carry on being as influential as he is at the moment in the first couple of weeks, even for another 10, 12 weeks, they'll be after such a good start that it'll be hard for them to lose that momentum going forward, I think. So yeah, he's a crucial part of their ambition this year, and he's certainly living up to expectations at the moment. There were a number of other games going on, weren't there? We aren't going to be able to cover all of them every week. And we won't be able to cover them all this week, I don't think, because there's that many. There's 20 games a weekend. We've focused on 6 there. We've tried to cover. I think we've managed to get the results, and I think we'll make a few comments on the others, at least if there's something worth commenting on. Some of the games, perhaps not much to say about. But yeah, what did you notice? What things did you pick out from the other games, results-wise? Or if we do all the results, was there anything particular that you noticed in those games that you saw?
Well, the first one I want to draw your attention to, Liam, which I think I did on Friday night as well, is when I was sat in the pub watching the highlights of Betis Deportivo against Narcisa Tarragona on my phone. I noticed a message from a follower saying that we'd been mentioned on the commentary, which I think, I think that's quite cool from our perspective. We are an English-speaking podcast on the Primera Federación, the third tier of Spanish football, but we got a shout out on the television. That's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I was absolutely delighted about that. I have to say, we love what we do, but there's nothing better than hearing that other people in the country where we talk about the football we talk about comes from that country have noticed that we're out there. That's lovely and really kind words. Thank you very much to Jorge San Cristobal, who heard it. I didn't manage to watch the first half, so if it hadn't been for Jorge, we wouldn't even have known that we had been mentioned. and the shout out was from Luis del Pozo, one of the commentators on Primera Federación games, and a lovely comment from afterwards saying keep up the good work and everything. So that means a huge amount to us, and all our interactions, with people over the last 3 or 4 months are incredibly precious to us, because of course we love doing it, we love watching games, we love talking about the league, but it's lovely when people do take the time to say that they like what we're doing. And so thank you to both of you, both Jorge and Luis, for for helping us to have a particularly nice Friday night on the back of those comments. Cartagena, Atletico and Madrileño, and I mean, we'd say that game ended really. We're so excited about being mentioned. It ended 2-2, by the way.
Yeah,
yeah.
Hardy with a double, including as you mentioned before, Liam, that absolutely fantastic penalty which we put a video up online as well, and again, absolute net breaker. Cartagena, though, that was another
not
great
Cartagena.
game,
Stop calling it Cartagena.
Cartagena. Oh. You know what? I've spelt it out here as well on that. Oh,
you have. You haven't even got your spelling correctly. Yeah, it's just not
called myself.
Anyway, Cartagena, what did they do?
Well, a fantastic 3-2 win against Atletico Madrileño. I remembered it that time. A really tasty game at Canova this weekend. Luis Mirodondo, a player that you I assume you know quite well from his time in Spanish Segunda. He played very well for them.
Funny one. I first noticed him. I didn't even know who he was, to be honest. I went to watch a game, I think, between Alcoyano and Tequera. And I was like, last times you go to a game, you don't know much about the teams involved. And you're like, who is he? I noticed him straight away, Luis Mirodondo. And I think he was Andorra last season. But I don't know if that was a loan move or whether they signed him. Anyway, didn't work out from Andorra. I'm not sure he's played in Segunda at all, actually. Maybe I'm not sure. As I say, he for me is somebody who I associate with Antequera. Didn't really do anything at Andorra, and then has come to Cartagena and was hugely impressive in this game. And I think he could be a massive player for them this season. Eldense 1 Villarreal B 0. I did see this game. It wasn't a cracker, I have to say, but the Filial lost, so I was happy about that. I watched the first half of Lugo against Real Avilés, and that ended 0-0. Much better from Real Avilés. Industrial managed to carry some attacking threat whilst not conceding goals like confetti at the other end, which was great. And then Alcorcón had a good win this weekend, their first win of the season, didn't they?
They did, yes, a 2-1 win against Teruel. Obviously great for them to get back on the board after the disappointment of the first week. I did want to ask you on Lugo, to be fair, because when we did the preview shows, we sort of looked at the squad that they were building. And, there's no shame in going and getting a draw away at Real Madrid Castilla, or I think actually
they lost
in Madrid. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they lost. They've only got 1 point out of 6, which, I mean, it's very early days. I thought they were decent against Real Avilés, I have to say. I only saw the first half, but I thought they looked pretty good. I think they'll get there okay. I think they will still be contenders. But no
need to be worried.
It's momentum. 1 point out of 6 from those 2 games. Yeah, it's tough to go to Real Madrid Castilla on the first weekend of the season, but you'd want to bounce back with a win against a side that's been beaten at home, and newly promoted side, wouldn't you? So 0-0 will be a bit disappointing, but some promising signs there. I think that they can still contend at, nearer the top than the bottom of the table, really. And as they get shot. I mean, we tipped them. We tipped. I think one of the things I said was I couldn't see how they were going to score any goals. They scored 4 goals in the first 2 games. What do I know? Tremendous stuff from the other 2. I mean, I think both games have been at home, haven't they? But still, 4 goals in the first 2 games. That's a heck of a return, isn't it?
It really is, and like you say, where they've picked up, players that admittedly we'd never heard of before, but certainly Baba making another impression in this match. They will take results like this all day long, won't they? And the other promoted side that I wanted to talk about this week was the Pond Derby, Liam, between Ponferradina and Pontevedra. It was the latter that came off the winners there as well. A fantastic win for them, and a bit of you've noted it, a rude awakening for Estevez and co.
Yeah, I think so. I think they were so comfortable, weren't they, in that first game against Real Avilés. I'm not suggesting complacency had set in for another promoted side coming to town in their first home game. But yeah, I think that is probably what they need early on, isn't it? A kind of bit of a wake-up call after such an easy first week and disappointing second week. We did mention, of course, that Arenas de Getxo drew against Cartagena, and they'll probably also take a point away from home, won't they? As a newly promoted side, even against another newly promoted side. That's a decent result for them. But yeah, I think as overall, as I say, Teruel, a little bit disappointing so far. But a lot of promoted sides from Segunda Federación, and so especially, as I say, like Real Avilés, even then when they start with a poor result in the first week, they seem to have recovered quite well in the second. So hopefully, as many of these as possible will stay competitive, and we won't have to worry about them dropping out of the division again straight away. Algeciras Marbella. Another chance to mention a former Yaclano Deportivo player. He made my team of the week as well for Grupo Dos. Mallorca was excellent for Algeciras in this game. But again, Marbella perhaps a bit disappointed by this one after the jubilation of that 2-1 win against Real Murcia. You'd think they'd probably expect to go to Algeciras and get a win, wouldn't you?
Oh, absolutely, you would. And to be fair, I thought they were looking good for it in large portions of this game. However, they just couldn't break down Algeciras. They are just. It was a fine defensive performance. Pitch not looking great, Liam. Even again, there's going to be some real concern at the club there. We're 2 games in and it's already deteriorating, which is not great. But I'm sure they'll take the point to stop the rot. It gets a point on the board for them as well. Another team who got points on the board too, Liam. Tarazona. What a result this is! 94th minute winner against Antequera. We were worried about Tarazona, to be fair, weren't we? But this would suggest that actually they're going down swinging.
Yeah, I worry about the distance that they're going to have to travel on such a regular basis. That's going to take it out of the players, I would think, going into Grupo Dos from Grupo Uno, which is a slightly more local group for them, a lot more fairly nearby away games than there are now. But yeah, brilliant win, 94th minute winner. And we had another late winner, didn't we, that we were very pleased about in Vigo. Our boys from Guadalajara with the purple shirts. 89th minute winner. Thank you very much, Blanca, for that. Tremendous stuff. And obviously against a filial, even better. But yeah, Guadalajara up and running, Nick.
They are. It's looking good for that playoff finish. And I tell you what, I admired how they played towards the end of this game because they just thought, bugger it, we're away from home. Let's just stick it in the mixer and go for it. And what a header that was. And we even got a retweet from the player who scored it as well, if I noticed, Liam. So he was also very happy with our applause for it. And great to see them off the mark as well. Talavera too, getting a home draw against Bilbao Athletic. No disrespect there. It's quite a good result for them, and obviously they're up and running again too. Orense and Osasuna Promesas drawing 1-1. But the result I want to bring your eye towards here, Liam, is the last one. Arenteiro 1, Unionistas 0. It is looking grim for Unionistas already, isn't it?
I think it is. I don't like the vibes from the coach. I don't think he's going about the right way, really. Sort of saying, we haven't got much of a team. Everyone's better than us. I don't like that vibe at all from Riera. And I don't think Arenteiro are very good, to be perfectly honest, this season. I think their squad is a lot weaker than it was. It's a ridiculously heavy squad at the moment in terms of number of players. But I think, even that, the fact they've signed everybody, it'll take me a while to gel. And I'm not sure there's an awful lot of quality there, even when it does. Unionistas, no goals, no points from the first 2 games, and not the biggest opponents either. Osasuna Promesas and Arenteiro. So yeah, it's not a good start for them. I'm not hopeful for them. I very much hope I'm wrong, but yeah, it's only 2 games. But yeah, it's not what you want to see from them in the opening 180 minutes of the season.
No, absolutely not. And they're definitely not going to make my 3 games to watch this weekend, our Unionistas, Liam, as that may not surprise you. The ones that will make the games to watch this weekend is starting with a Basque derby on Friday night. It's between Arenas de Getxo and Baracaldo, at Baracaldo as well, which I think is quite interesting because these are 2, obviously, suburbs or towns within the area of Bilbao. So obviously I think there'll be a lot of local interest in this game. But I tell you what, if Arenas Club win here on Friday night, they could go top of the league. Really 2-finger territory for us, Liam, because we had them finishing towards the bottom. But there'd be some very happy people in the area this weekend if they can manage to get a win there. The other game I'm recommending is Cacereño against Arenteiro, the first home game of the season. And if you listen to this in audio format, I did just use air quotes on the podcast. It's fun because obviously they're at the Extremadura Stadium, the Francisco de la Hera. So, it'd be good to see them play down there. And I know for a fact that Cacereño fans will travel to that as well. It's about an hour south, if I remember rightly, Liam, if I've got my geography right there. So it'd be good to see them do that. And then last but not least, Pontevedra against Tenerife. Will the Pons that just won't say no finally get the scalp on Sunday evening and put Tenerife back in their box? I'm not seeing that they will. However, it's a tough place to go, isn't it, for Tenerife, given what we've seen and how resilient Pontevedra are being so far this season?
Yeah, 4 points out of 6 for Pontevedra. That's pretty decent, isn't it? Yeah, and obviously last time the spectacular equaliser by their keeper. They'll hope to not leave it that late to get any points in this particular encounter. Yeah, a tough ask for them, as it is going to be for any team that comes up against Tenerife this season. But looking forward to the challenge, no doubt. And that should be a decent crowd there in Barcelona, I would imagine, for that one. My 3 games in Grupo Dos. Well, you've talked already about how they are very entertaining to watch. Why would I not want to watch them again this weekend, especially after the game I watched last weekend? Sabadell against Cartagena, Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. Spanish time. They both were in the goals, weren't they? Obviously, Sabadell scored 2 and Cartagena scored 3. So this game will undoubtedly finish 0-0 after me bigging it up and saying it should be a cracker. Marbella Ibiza. That's a big game. I think that might be the biggest game across either group this weekend. 4:15 Spanish time, Saturday afternoon, I think it is. These sides we both think will be in the shake-up for the top 5, and they're coming head-to-head very early on in the season, so we'll see how that one works out. Should be a cracker, that one, hopefully. And then Antequera Alcorcon, which I think is Saturday evening at 9 p.m. Spanish time, and I will definitely watch this one because I want to see if I could spy the legend that is Alex O'Brien, the man behind the Alcorcon Irlanda Twitter account. He's going to be in the crowd. And I'm also intrigued to see if I will spot his girlfriend standing alongside him, because I think she's also going to Andalucía. Will she make her first appearance at a Primera Federación game? And on that note, Nick, do you think your wife will ever watch a Primera Federación game live?
Absolutely not. And there's history behind this. Only because it's going to sound awful, I once tricked my lovely wife, Rebecca, to going to watch Blackpool away at Shrewsbury under the guise of, isn't Shrewsbury a lovely place? We lived about an hour away in Chester at the time, and it was more of like let's go do some shopping, let's go and have some nice food. Oh, by the way, there's a game being played, Blackpool are away at Shrewsbury. Do you fancy it? It didn't go down very well. I don't think she'll fall for that again, and I don't think she'd fancy a Primera RF game, unfortunately. But never say never. What about you?
Yeah, I don't think my lovely wife Anna will be particularly up for ever attending a Primera Federación game. But hope springs eternal. I've never tricked her in the dastardly fashion that you trick your wife. So maybe I'll play that card, and she might be impressed. At least I'll get her aside the ground. Anyway, yeah, I very much hope that Alex enjoys his trip, and it would be lovely if his girlfriend were there as well. But I'm sure she may find other things that she thinks are more worthwhile to do. Time will tell. Irrespective of this side story, I think it could be a really interesting game. I know that Alcorcon haven't scored on the road yet, and Antequera haven't scored anywhere yet, but I do think there'll be goals in this one, so it should be a really decent game to watch on Saturday night. Is that about it, or is there anything you want to cover? And I'm conscious that we must be nearly at the hour mark now, Nick, yeah, time flies when you're having fun, but I'm not sure that anyone wants to listen to any more of us.
It will. Maybe I'll save my question for next week after we see Cartagena play at home, but not in their stadium, because I've got some queries around sort of like the stadium's element of Primera Federación at the moment, given all the stuff that's going on. But I might just keep that for next week. Any plugs in terms of Spanish Segunda this week? Have we got anything to look forward to or anything like that?
Spanish Segunda always had loads to look forward to, as you know. It's just a question of how can you fit all this football into one weekend, but I always make a really good effort at it, Nick. So I will be combining my love of Spanish Segunda with my love of Primera Federación to the best of my ability between Friday and Monday. So yeah, it should be there's always good games to watch in Segunda, if you can find a way to watch them, of course, which is not always that easy.
No, which is always the hard part. And from my benefit on El Partido, if anyone is listening from there as well, this week's episode is going a bit French, Liam. We're going to be speaking to Matt Harrison about building our favourite French 11. Do you have a favourite French footballer who played in Spain?
That's a very good question. A favourite French footballer who played in Spain? Well, I tell you, it wouldn't be Benzema. but yeah, I'll have to think about that one. I'll get back to you next week, or maybe I'll put some comments when you post your episode. But yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, I managed to write my 11 down the other day, and I started strong, and then it just turned mental. So I'm looking forward to rationalising my late night thoughts. But yeah, it should be a fun episode, and obviously also looking forward to watching some Primera Federación football this weekend. I want to say thank you to you, Liam, for talking all this football with me this evening. It's been a pleasure as always.
Likewise, it's been a really good weekend to round up. I look forward to doing the same next week.
Absolutely. And I'd like to say gracias again to you guys at home. The support has been incredible as always. We've also hit 600 followers on X/Twitter. So again, shows the strength of what we're talking about in terms of the interest there. It's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for listening at home. We'll see you again next time. I'll catch you soon, Liam. See you later.